Ogre is a game of futuristic tank combat created by Steve Jackson and released in 1977 as both a board and miniatures game. It was successfully reintroduced to the game community through a wildly large Kickstarter as a board game, and all updated components and pretty much all of the original expansions that came out for the game are all included in the Designer's Edition and the edition that's available now. Before we go in and kind of zoom into the tabletop here and go through a gameplay example, let's generally talk about how the turn works. It's worth noting that there's lots of advanced rules and different ways to play the game. There's different maps, as you've seen when we did the unboxing for the game, but the basic game and the basic rules are pretty straightforward. If you're just starting out, I highly recommend you play the Mark III scenario, which is what we'll step through today in one of our examples. But what you have here is a very basic board. You've got your counters, but the general turn sequences for the basic rules, you have a recovery phase to start. And in the recovery phase, vehicles that have been previously disabled before the last Ogre Turn get to recover. Then from there you'll go on to the movement phase, and of course all of these counters, we'll take a look at it here, have a movement value, and that's the number of hexes they can move up to in a given turn. And then after that you'll do your attacking, and we'll talk about how attacks are resolved here in a second. And then the last phase is really your secondary movement phase, and there's a certain type of vehicle class in this game called GEVs, or ground effect vehicles. And they're these hovercrafts that are kind of light, they can strike and move away. So they have two movement values separated by a slash. And what that means is in the first movement phase they can move that first value, they can then attack. And then in the secondary movement phase, they can use their second movement value to move away or wherever they want to move on the map. Combat, really quick, is all done through calculating odds. And so everything will have an attack strength, and by comparing the attack strength to the defense strength, you'll come up with your combat odds. There's a table here that's very easy to read. If you're not great with math and determining odds, that are always rounded down in this game to the worst odds, but if you're not great with math, there's an app for iOS and for Android that you can download, and you can just plug the numbers in and it will do all the math for you. And even roll the dice if you want to, but of course I would never do that because I love rolling dice even when they come up ones all the time. Anyways, long story short is you have a combat results table. So in an example here, I have two infantry units. Their attack strength is 3, and I'm gonna attack the secondary batteries on this ogre, which have a defense of 3. And so I can combine these two together, and generally you can combine however you want. Of course, you're going to get fewer shots if you combine more units together, but that's the advantage, being that you're going to get better odds. And so by combining these two, I can get a 6 attack strength of 6 to a defense of 3, which is 2 to 1 odds. If I look over on the table here, I'm going to roll a standard 6-sided dice here, and it's going to give me a result, right? And so I just look at the table. On a result of 1, it's no effect, or essentially a miss. On a result of D, that would be disabled. Now, disabled does not have any effect against ogres. It affects other units, however. And then the other results, 4+, are an X, and an X it just means destroyed. And so what I want for an ogre is that X result, so it can destroy a secondary battery. Otherwise, it's no effect. And that's the basic combat mechanism right there. There's really nothing else fancy going on. It's very straightforward. So let's zoom in here to the map and take a walk through an example of a game turn for both the ogre and the infantry here. So let's take a closer look at how to play ogre. First, we'll briefly discuss terrain. There's 3 types of terrain on the basic ogre map. There are open hexes, which are brown. There are crater hexes, which are these red dots here. These are impassable to everything. And then there are ridge lines, which are these kind of spidery web looking things that follow the edges of the hexes here. Ogres, these giant tanks here, they only care about craters, because craters are impassable to everything. Otherwise, they drive over anything, whether that's an enemy tank or a ridge line, it doesn't matter, it drives right over it. Infantry, these infantry here, they're considered to have jetpacks and be advanced. They can also go over ridge lines and through open hexes, and of course, also craters are impassable to them. Vehicles, the rest of the vehicles here, are really classified into 2 different types. Regular vehicles like heavy tanks and missile tanks here, they have to go around ridge lines. Craters are impassable, otherwise they can move through the open terrain. GEVs, or ground effect vehicles, are these hovercraft vehicles that are kind of quick hit vehicles. They also have to go around ridge lines, however, as well. If we take a closer look at some of the pan-European units here, which is the blue side, there's a command post back here that has a defense of 0, which is something you find in the book. But the rest of the units here that are actually combat units have all of the statistics that you need to understand on the actual unit counters here. And so the standard layout for a unit counter is there's on the left side here 2 numbers separated by a slash. The first number, so for example for this heavy tank here, it's a 4/2. The first number is the attack strength, and the second number is the range. And so this is an attack strength of 4 with a range of 2 hexes. On the other side, there's a D here, D3, which means the defensive value of this unit is 3. And then on the bottom here, it says M3, so which means the movement of this unit is 3 hexes. The only slight change you'll see to that for the units in this game that I have laid out here are for ground effect vehicles. They have a movement value, in this case, of 4-3, which means they can move 4 hexes in the standard movement phase, and then an additional 3 hexes when we get to the second movement phase, which is just for ground effect vehicles. You'll notice the Ogre doesn't have any particular stats on it here. It's just a 3D cardboard cutout here. What it has instead is the Ogre tracking card here, and this is for an Ogre Mark III, but generally speaking, all Ogres will have very similar armaments. They'll have main batteries here, so this has one single main battery that is attack strength 4, a range of 3 hexes, and defense 4. So if somebody wanted to attack it and try and destroy the main battery, the defense value is 4. It has 4 secondary batteries that are range 2 with an attack strength of 3 and a defense of 3. It also has 8 anti-personnel weapons, which are only a 1 hex range, a defense of 1, and an attack strength of 1. Something a little special at anti-personnel weapons is they can only be used to attack infantry. They have no effect against vehicles. They can also be used to attack defense 0 targets. So for example, the command post back here is a defense of 0. Anti-personnel weapons could be used to destroy this. Most Ogres will have missiles or missile racks. Most have missiles. In this case, there's 2 missiles that this particular Ogre carries. And missiles are a one-use weapon, so as soon as you use a missile, you would mark off the box. In all the other cases, these boxes only get marked off when damage is done and they're destroyed. So in the case of missiles, they can be destroyed, so they have an attack strength of 6 and a range of 5, so they're very good, but they're limited, with a defense of 3. So either the enemy attacks and can try and destroy these before they're used, or when they're used, the boxes would be also marked. So that's the way these get marked. Over here you have tread units, and this particular Ogre has 45 tread units, but you can see move starts at 3, and then as it takes tread units off and gets through the first 2 rows here, its move would then be reduced to 2, 2 additional rows to move is 1, 2 additional rows to move is 0. In order to destroy an Ogre, all the boxes, including tread units and armaments, have to be marked off. Normally, so in the basic rules here, stacking is not allowed. You can move through friendly units, but you can't stop your movement and stack multiple counters on the same space. The one exception to that rule is infantry. In this case, this is a 3/1 infantry, and you can see it actually has a picture of 3 different infantry guys on it. On the flip side of this is a 2, which is just 2 infantry guys, and of course there's markers for 1 infantry guy. What this is actually saying is there's 3 infantry squads stacked in this one square, and this is represented by this one D3, movement 2, 3/1, attack strength 3, 1 range token. You can split these apart into 3 1s, you could have a 2 and a 1, you can merge them back together later on. It's just representing 3 squads in this one square. While they're all together, they will kind of live and die as one group. So if an X result is rolled against them, the whole counter will be removed, all 3 infantry squads. So that's the risk with stacking, but stacking also gives you the advantage of the fact that you can, since they're range 1, get more infantry into a single square and be more powerful on the attack and have a better defense. Let's start by taking the Ogre Turn. As I mentioned earlier, from a basic rules perspective, the turn sequence is recover. So any disabled vehicles that weren't disabled in the last Ogre Turn can flip over. And what you can see here is if we take one of these vehicles, on the flip side is some construction bars here. It says disabled, and it just shows a defense value. So that means a disabled vehicle, while it's disabled, cannot attack and it cannot move. It can only defend itself. If a disabled vehicle takes a second disabled result, it's immediately destroyed. So since there's no disabled vehicles, nothing would recover. From there you go to the movement phase. After the movement phase, it's the fire phase, and then it's the second GEV movement phase. Because all that's on the Combine sign here, the North American Combine, which is the red unit here in the Ogre, it doesn't have any of that fancy stuff, so essentially it's going to move. It has a movement of 3. Since it hasn't taken any tread points of damage, it will go 1, 2, 3 squares to start its turn. It can then fire, and of course its anti-personnel can only shoot infantry that are 1 hex away. There's nothing there. Its secondary batteries shoot out to 2, but there's also nothing in that range currently. But let's look at the main battery. It has a range of 3, so there's 3 infantry units that are 3 hexes away and can be shot by the main battery. It has an attack strength of 4, so it's going to target one of these infantry units here, these stacked infantry units here. It's a defensive 3, so a 4 to 3 is 1-to-1 odds. If we look over here, on a 1 or a 2, it's going to be no effect. On a 3 or 4, it'll be disable effect. For disabled that go against infantry, you just flip it over and they lose 1 squad, or an X effect on a 5 or a 6, which would remove the entire marker. So we're going to shoot right now our main battery. I'm going to roll the dice. I roll a 5, so in a result of a 5 or a 6 on a 1-to-1, that marker is destroyed. So I'll remove the entire marker. Excellent turn for the Combine there. Now, we're going to look at the missiles. There's 2 missiles. Do I want to use them right now? I am going to use one of them. There's a mobile howitzer back here, which is an attack strength of 6 and a range of 6, so it's pretty powerful. I'm going to fire a missile against this. Now, when I fired my main battery, I didn't mark anything off. It has to be destroyed by enemy fire, but because missiles are one-use weapons, I'm going to fire one of them. I could fire both if I wanted to, but I'm going to fire one of them and mark it off right now. Attack strength of 6 to a defense of 2 would be 3-to-1. So on a 1 or a 2, I'll get a disabled result. On a 3+, I'll get an X result and destroy the unit. So I'm going to roll the dice here. I get a 5 again. Awesome. Kapow. The mobile howitzer is destroyed. At this point, I don't want to fire my other missile, and there's nothing else in range. There's nothing else I can do. I don't have any GEVs, so I don't get the second movement phase. I now go to the Pan-European player here, who is the blue side. They're going to start out by recovering any disabled vehicles that weren't disabled in this last Ogre turn. They don't have any, so they go straight to movement. I'm going to move the infantry here, which can move 2 spaces and has a range of 1. They want to get right beside the Ogre here, so he's going to go 1-2. He's going to go 1-2, and again, they can ignore ridge lines. I'll go over to the heavy tanks. They have a movement of 3, so plenty of movement, but a range of 2. So they want to get into these hexes here so that they can shoot the Ogre this turn. He's going to go 1-2, 1-2, and 1-2. There's no ridge lines here, so they can just advance straight up. I'm going to go over here to the ground effect vehicles, or the GEVs. They can move 4 hexes in this first movement phase. They have a range of 2, and so I'm going to move them, avoiding ridge lines. So 1, 2, 3, can get him into range. 4, so there's some extra room. He's still in range. He's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now he's 2 away. He'll go 1, 2, 3. He's 2 away. And now this guy's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And he's 2 away. So great, everybody can shoot here. I have some missile tanks back here. Their range is 4 hexes, so they have more range, but their movement is 2. Enough to get them into range. He'll go 1, 2. He's going to go 1, 2, and he's going to go 1, 2. Now that everybody can shoot at the Ogre. So let's start off by starting to pick where we're going to shoot. I'm going to start with the missile tanks. Well, there's 1 missile that's left on board the Ogre, and I don't want to have that player take the opportunity to shoot it at my CP and win the game. So it's a defense of 3. If I look at the missile tank, it's a 3/4, so range of 4, but it has a 3 attack. Now if I do 3 on 3, that's 1-to-1 odds. It's important to note that you can pretty much combine any number of attack strengths with your units into a single shot. Of course, it's going to limit how many times you shoot, but you'll have better odds. And that's what I'm going to do here. I have 3 missile tanks that are 3s. I'm going to combine them together for an attack strength of 9 against a defense of 3, makes it 3-to-1. Now, Ogres ignore disabled results. They only care about X results or destroyed results. So I need a 3+ to destroy that final missile. I'm going to roll the dice here for the Pan-European dice. I roll a 6. That's going to destroy the second missile. Excellent. Because there's generally so many counters on the table here, it's a good idea as you're shooting to kind of cock the ones that I've already shot so you don't end up double shooting any units. So I'll just make those like that so we know we shot those. Next I'm going to do the GEVs. The next longest range item on the Ogre that I want to destroy is the main battery. It has a defense of 4, and the GEV has an attack of 2. So right now I'm at 1-to-2 odds, which is not good. I'm going to combine all 4 GEVs together for 2, 4, 6, 8 attack strength against a defense of 4. We'll make it 2-to-1. Now I need a 4 or better to destroy that main battery. I'll roll the dice. I roll a 2, which is no effect. I'm going to cock these guys so that I know I shot them. And then that leaves heavy tanks and infantry. Now the infantry don't like the fact that there's so many anti-personnel weapons on this particular Ogre, so they're going to both take a single shot each. at the anti-personnel. So they're an attack strength of 3. The reason they're not going to combine fire is because the anti-personnel is just a defense of 1. So they're already 3-to-1 odds just firing on their own. So first I'll shoot this at 3-to-1 odds. I need a 3 or better to destroy an anti-personnel weapon. They roll a 6, that's excellent. So now I'll mark and destroy an anti-personnel weapon. The second shot will go. He rolls a 4, that's better than that's a 3 or better because it's 3-to-1 odds, so that's a second destroyed anti-personnel weapon. So I'll cock both of those. Now I have 3 heavy tanks remaining. And what I'm going to do there is fire at tread units to try and slow down the ogre, or at least start to slow him down or get near it. And so the only time you cannot stack or combine your attack values together is when you're attacking treads. So it's always resolved at 1-to-1, which means you always need a 5 or a 6 to hit. If you hit, you mark off the number of treads equal to your attack rating. So these are all attack rating 4 for these heavy tanks. For each hit I get, I'm going to mark off 4 treads. So I'm going to start. I have 3 different shots since I can't combine fire. The first one is a 4. That's a D, which is no effect. Fire the second one. They get a 2, no effect. And the third one is a 4, no effect. So just for the sake of the game example here, we'll just say that the third one rolled a 5 or 6 here and actually hit. So in that case, I would just mark off his attack rating of 4 would be 4 treads, for example. So great, at this point, everything has fired on the Pan-European side. I'm just going to clean up the markers here. We go from the fire phase to the second movement phase, which is just for ground effect vehicles, which are over here. They get a secondary movement of 3, so he's going to go 1, 2, 3 and run away, 1, 2, 3 running away, and 1, 2, 3 to run away, and he'll go 1, 2, 3 to run away. So great, they've backed off. At this point, the Pan-European turn is complete. We're going to go back to the Ogre turn and show you one more Ogre turn just so you can see the effects of ramming. So great, the Ogre comes over here. He's still moving at 3. He's going to first start by moving into the infantry square here, which has 3 infantry squads on it. Now, if he did not have any anti-personnel weapons, or they were all destroyed, nothing would happen. But because he does have anti-personnel weapons left, simply moving into the square will reduce the squad by 1 squad. So it goes from a 3 squad to a 2 squad. So I just flip it over. He's got another 2 movement points left. He's going to then ram this heavy tank. The basic ramming rules are, for vehicles, is first you assess damage to the ogre based on what you're hitting here. So this is a heavy tank. On the quick reference sheet here, there's this handy table down in the bottom left here that tells you how much damage occurs to the ogre as a result of this ramming. Under a heavy tank, it says that it's going to assess 2 treads of damage. And so I'll just put this back over here. So 2 treads, I'm going to mark off 2 treads for ramming it. And then it's a simple dice roll. On a 1 through 3, the vehicle is disabled, and on a 4+, it's going to be destroyed. So I'm going to roll the dice here. Great, I rolled a 1. Lovely. So at this point, the heavy tank is disabled. I'm going to flip it over. Now, I have 1 movement point left, and I could certainly move on, or I could move into another space and ram something else. But you always have the choice of ramming once again in the same space. So he's going to use his last movement point to ram that heavy tank again, because the best result, or really the worst result he's going to get, is a disabled. And as I mentioned earlier, a second disabled on something that's already disabled destroys it. So he'll automatically destroy that heavy tank while assessing a further, because he's ramming it a second time, 2 treads to his 2 treads of damage to the ogre here. So the whole top row is done. When the second row is filled in, his movement will then be 2, but he's still got a little bit left here. So that was his 3 movement points. He could certainly at this point fire all of his weapons, his anti-personnel weapons that are remaining. He's got secondary and main batteries that are remaining and could do a lot of damage. With the ogre completing its turn, its second turn, and having finished all of its ramming, it's worth noting it'll go to the Pan-European side, and underneath of here is an infantry unit. Any infantry that's right underneath the ogre, any unit that's right under the ogre, is considered to be at range 1 from the ogre, and they're not stuck there. They can move away and do whatever they want. Of course, at this point, the Pan-European player could recover any disabled vehicles, move around again, and pretty much rinse and repeat, the attacking, the secondary movement phase until the scenario ends and you meet the objectives, one side or the other. So that's a basic walkthrough of the Ogre basic rules, and please join us for the next game where we're going to play on a GEV map and show a little bit more of the advanced stuff as we play through a full game of Ogre.